Picture this, a quiet Windsor study, the weight of centuries pressing down on every stone. Charles, pale and trembling, reveals to William and Kate the cruel truth. His time may be shorter than anyone imagined. In that moment, instinct overtakes protocol. Kate reaches out, gently clasping his hand, offering comfort not as a princess but as a daughter. But before the warmth can settle, Camilla's voice slices through the silence. Charles let go of her hand. The room freezes. A simple gesture of compassion suddenly branded as a breach of royal conduct. And in that fragile instant, the battle between family and duty explodes into the open. If moments like this leave you torn between sympathy and shock, you're not alone. Royal life has always balanced love against protocol, but rarely has it felt this raw. If you want more emotional insights into the lives behind the palace doors, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more royal deep dives, and share it with friends who love these untold royal moments. The day began like so many others inside Adelaide Cottage. The kitchen glowed with the soft amber of winter light, filtering through the ivy-framed windows. Kate, sleeves rolled neatly to her elbows, buttered toast with the quiet precision of someone who found comfort in the rhythm of routine. George hunched over his geography homework. Charlotte debated passionately with Louis about whether jam or Marmite was the superior spread, and the coffee machine hissed in the background, the unofficial signal that the day had truly begun. For just a moment, they looked like any other family. No titles, no cameras, just parents and children rushing against the morning clock. And Kate, ever aware of how fragile these bubbles of normality were, savored it. But then, the phone rang. Not Kate's mobile, not William's work line, the landline, the one almost no one used. Its sharp chime cut through the morning calm like a blade through silk. William froze mid-sip of coffee. Kate's butter knife hovered, stilled against the toast. Even the children sensed it. Their chatter faded into silence, eyes darting between their parents. William answered, voice carefully neutral, though the tension in his shoulders betrayed him. Hello? A pause. Then softer. Dad? Kate knew instantly something was wrong. The tone was different, not the clipped formality of a monarch summoning his heir, but the fragile tremor of a father who could barely hold himself together. Charles wanted them at Windsor. At once. And not just William, Kate too. His voice broke when he said it.
The room seemed to shrink. The children's bright chatter felt impossibly far away. Kate exchanged a glance with William, and in that single look, they understood. Their world had just shifted. Charlotte's small voice cracked the silence. Is Grandpa okay? William forced a smile. The kind parent's perfect when the truth feels too heavy. Is fine, darling. Just royal business. Nothing for you to worry about. But even George, wise beyond his years, didn't quite believe it. Within minutes, the choreography of duty overtook the cottage. Security was notified. Bags were prepared. The school run handed over to staff. And yet, beneath the surface, something far more personal churned, a fear neither William nor Kate dared voice in front of the children. As they climbed into the Range Rover, the crisp morning air felt heavier than usual. Kate glanced back at the cottage, its ivy walls receding into the distance. That home, so carefully nurtured as their safe haven, suddenly seemed unbearably fragile. Ahead lay Windsor Castle, 1,000 years of history waiting with answers they weren't sure they wanted to hear. The drive was silent, except for the hum of the engine and the unspoken dread that filled the space between them. William's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles whitened. Kate reached across, her fingers brushing his. He didn't let go. Neither of them spoke, because they both knew, once the truth was spoken aloud, nothing in their lives would ever be the same again. The gravel crunched beneath the Range Rover's tires as William slowed through Windsor's gates. The towering stone walls loomed above them, every turret and battlement whispering of centuries past. This was no ordinary visit. Both of them felt it in their bones. Kate glanced at her husband. His profile was sharp against the pale winter light, jaw clenched, hands gripping the wheel with too much force. He had slipped into his public mask, the posture of a prince who could not afford to falter. Yet beneath it, she could see the tremor of a son bracing for news he couldn't bear. Inside the castle, the air was cool, perfumed faintly with bergamot, Charles' signature. Tapestries hung heavy on the walls, portraits of stern ancestors watching silently, as though they too were waiting. A chamberlain ushered them into the king's private study. And in that instant, Kate knew something was terribly wrong. Charles looked smaller. His frame was thinner, his hands clasped tightly together on the desk to mask their tremor. The silver in his hair caught the light, and for the first time he looked every one of his 75 years. Behind him, Camilla stood by the window, her posture stiff, her face drawn, eyes rimmed in red though quickly masked beneath composure. "Sit, please," Charles said softly. His voice carried the weight of duty, but beneath it was something raw, dread. William and Kate Saturday. Without thinking, their hands found each other's, fingers intertwined like an anchor. Charles opened a folder, but didn't look at it. His eyes found William's instead, brimming with decades of love, regret, and a father's impossible duty. "I've been to see the doctors," he began. A pause. A breath. "Pancreatic cancer. Stage 3. The words hit like a physical blow. William stiffened, his entire body frozen in disbelief. Kate's training as a royal held her face still, but inside she shattered. 18 months, maybe 2 years. That was a prognosis. Numbers fell into the silence like stones into a well, cold, unyielding, echoing endlessly. William stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the rug. He turned to the window, his back rigid, as though looking out at the ancient oaks might steady him. Kate kept her gaze on Charles, because someone had to. Someone had to stay in the moment. "How do we tell the children?" she asked gently. Charles's voice cracked. The thought of George, Charlotte, and Louis, his beloved grandchildren, pierced him deeper than any medical report. "We'll find a way," William answered, finally turning back, his face a mask of composure though his eyes betrayed him. For a fleeting moment, Charles faltered. His hand reached out, covering William's trembling fingers. Kate, moved by instinct, placed her own hand over his, 3 lives bound by something far older than protocol, love. And then, the chill. "Charles, let go of her hand." Camilla's voice, sharp as a blade, cut the room in two. The study fell silent. The silence in Charles's study had been suffocating, but the silence in the corridors afterward was even worse. William led Kate out with stiff, deliberate steps, his arm offered with perfect courtesy, though beneath the gesture was fury. Kate's composure never cracked, but William knew the truth. Her silence was her armor. They walked past the centuries-old tapestries, portraits of kings and queens long gone, and all Kate could think was, how many of them had endured moments like this? How many had buried grief under protocol? By the time they reached the car, the mask slipped. William's hand shook so violently he could barely fit the key into the ignition. He drove out to the castle grounds, the stone walls disappearing behind them, until the Range Rover jerked suddenly to the side of the narrow country road. Gravel sprayed, tires ground to a halt. Kate turned toward him just as the dam broke. William's head bowed, his shoulders heaving, the prince stripped away to reveal the son, terrified, furious, devastated. His breaths came in ragged gasps, each one edged with a weight of unshed tears. "I can't," he choked out. "I can't watch him die and pretend it's fine. I can't prepare George for a crown that's coming too fast. And I can't protect you from them, from a world that thinks your compassion is some kind of weakness." The words spilled from him like blood from a wound. Kate reached across the console, unbuckling her seat belt and wrapping her arms around him. He collapsed into her, sobs tearing out of him with the violence of 41 years of restraint finally breaking. She held him as she would their children, smoothing his hair, whispering softly, grounding him. "It isn't fair," he rasped against the shoulder. "None of it. Not Dad. Not George losing his childhood. Not you being treated like an outsider in your own family. It's not fair." Kate's own tears slipped free, quiet, steady. The irony struck her. Here they were, the future king and queen of England, finding their only moment of honesty in a parked car on a deserted lane. No protocol. No audience. Just 2 people clinging to each other in the wreckage of a family meeting that had turned cooler than it needed to be. When William finally lifted his head, eyes raw, Kate cupped his face in her hands. "We'll figure it out," she said firmly, her voice steady despite her own trembling. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." That's what we've always done. He stared at her, wonder cutting through the exhaustion. How are you always so strong? Her smile was sad, but sure. Because I learned from you. Because together, we're stronger than they'll ever understand. In that fragile cocoon of the car, surrounded by bare winter trees, they made an unspoken vow. Whatever storms were coming, whatever protocol demanded, their strength would come not from titles or crowns, but from each other. Outside, the world went on. Inside, their battle lines were drawn. Night had fallen by the time Adelaide Cottage came back into view. Through the glowing windows, William and Kate could see their children moving about. George bent over homework, Charlotte curled in a chair with a book, Louis busily constructing a fort out of cushions. The sight was almost unbearable in its innocence. Inside, there was laughter, warmth, the ordinary rhythm of family life. Outside, on the gravel drive, William and Kate lingered in the Range Rover, hands clasped tightly, knowing that what awaited them inside could never be entirely protected from the storm that had just begun. Later, after the children were tucked into bed with carefully chosen words about Grandpa being sick but brave, William and Kate finally allowed themselves a moment of quiet. Kate sat at her dressing table, fingers trembling as she removed her earrings. William stood behind her, his hands resting on her shoulders. "You don't have to be strong for me," he murmured. She met his eyes in the mirror, and for the first time that day, she let her composure slip. But the fragile stillness shattered at the sound of tires crunching on gravel. Headlights swept across the ivy-covered walls. William stiffened. Kate reached for her dressing gown. Few people would dare arrive unannounced at this hour. The doorbell rang. Together, they moved down the narrow corridor, past the quiet bedrooms where their children slept, toward the front door. William hesitated with his hand on the handle. Through the frosted glass, the outline of a lone figure stood waiting. He opened it, and there was Charles. Gone was a composed monarch from Windsor. Before them stood a father, face drawn with exhaustion, voice ragged with shame. "I came to apologize," he said without hesitation, "to both of you, for what happened today, for what Camilla said, for all of it." Kate tried to protest, to tell him he had nothing to apologize for, but Charles raised a trembling hand. "No, you reached for me when I needed it most, and you were made to feel ashamed for it. That's not who I am. That's not who we are meant to be." His eyes, damp with tears, sought hers with a kind of desperate gratitude. William stepped forward, voice softer now. "Come inside, Dad." Charles crossed the threshold, leaving the cold night behind. For a moment, it felt like reconciliation, like the threads of family might be woven together again. But before the door could close, another set of headlights swept across the drive. A second car pulled up. Its engine stilled, its door opened. Another figure stepped out, taller, purposeful, bringing with him the unmistakable weight of unfinished business. Kate and William exchanged a glance, weary, but united. The night was far from over, and neither was a battle for their family soul. Behind palace walls, love and protocol have always wrestled for dominance. But rarely has a conflict been this raw, this human. A dying king, a daughter-in-law's compassion, a wife's icy command, and a son caught between duty and fury. It's a story that reminds us a crown is not just gold and jewels, but a heavy weight carried by fragile hearts. So what happens next? Who was in that second car? And will this family cling to humanity or surrender to tradition? If this story left you thinking, feeling, or even questioning the meaning of loyalty inside the monarchy, hit the like button, share this video with friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more royal moments that history books never quite capture.